right, so we're live. We're live. What's up, good people? Welcome to another episode of Know Better, Do Better. This is your host. I'm Ray Leonard JR. This is the last show before the end of Black History Month, so I'm representing for the culture with the African medallion on. Of course, I have Dr. Moshe on, Dr. Moshe Lewis on with me today. So we're gonna have a fantastic show. So make sure you put all your notes in the comments and everything else to ask the questions that you want, because we're gonna have a tremendous show today. So today we're talking about music in medicine. So we got a little bit of music that we're going to bring to the show, but we're also going to be talking about the vaccines, the pandemic, about a little bit of music for your soul and how music does the body good. You know, when you're looking for some medicine, sometimes you just got to have some good soul to you. Because I know when I was feeling bad, sometimes I turn on some Stevie Wonder, or I turn on some Marvin Gaye, and everything seems to get better. You know, Aretha Franklin yells and singing to my soul, and everything feels better. So sometimes the best medicine is not the medicine that goes into your arm, but sometimes it's the medicine for your soul. So we're gonna talk about that with Dr. Moshe Lewis, and so we're so excited to have you on, Doctor. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely, welcome. I'm ecstatic. I know we've been talking a couple of weeks now about our ideas, and we're gonna keep it exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. We're pumped up.
Man, so I've been promoting everybody out to everybody about you and your background, and your story is tremendous. You know, even though you and I have been talking for a while, I had no idea, where you came from and what you were all about. I knew you were a good brother because you came from a good brother that recommended me to you. So I know I want to dive into that first, because here at Know Better, Do Better, we first talk about where you came from and where you're going, and then what you're doing at the present time. So first of all, I want to know, please tell the audience about your story and how you came to be, what your background is, and what was your driving force to get you to this point that you are today.
Sure, absolutely, yes. And a big shout out to Kevin, who hooked us up, and you always love when brothers are working together. And
KP.
I love KP in the house. I love it. I love your energy, your vibe, all the stuff you were doing. It just seemed like, a perfect match. So definitely, big ups to him. And so my background's, humble, just like a lot of people. But the difference is that I was adopted. And so really early on, at about 6 months, mom and dad didn't work out, and mom left. Dad was already gone. And so in those days, and it kind of same thing today, Child Protective Services gets called, and they basically just try to find a home. So it took them a few months to do that. They find a retired nurse, sister, my mom. I call her mom because it's who I've known since 6 months of age. So they kept me in the hospital for quite a while and started having her come visit with her husband. So they were almost 7 years old in Brooklyn, New York, from the South, Charleston and Tuskegee. Big shout out to Alabama and South Carolina here. And so anyway, long story short, keeping it compressed, very modest means, growing up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, in the place to be, much love. And they were like,
exactly. My daughter lives in Brooklyn now, so I know we talk about.
We gotta, give respect where it's due. So that's where I'm from, up to no good. And so they really had this concept of trying to help out, trying to do better. They felt like they had a choice. They could go with older people, or they could go with younger people and stay young. And so even though she was in her late 60s, about 68 or so, she went with the latter choice, and I'm delighted for it. She didn't stop there. She brought my brother in as well, because when they find a good home, I don't know if a lot of people know this about CPS, but Child Protective Services, they start, oh, that's that house over there? Oh, they things are working out. We've been visiting a couple of years. There's no assault and battery, nothing bad going on. Let's bring another one over. So my brother had Downs. His story is even more, serious. It's very severe Downs. It's not like Rain Man, the movie. And so we got to go up together. But he had severe Downs, and to this day is still with a family. The adopted parents have pressed on, but to a better calling. But long story short, there we grew up in the church, and a lot of love and a lot of neighbors helped, sort of keep the family together, so to speak. And with time, they reached out to my natural mom, and I was able to get to meet her.
Wow, wow. So you actually got to meet your natural mom, but then you also had the experience of actually growing up with your brother who had Down syndrome. So I mean that had to be an amazing family that took you guys in, because I hear so many stories. I do a lot with people from CPS and Child Protective Services and a different social welfare system. But most of the times you don't actually get the siblings to be together. So
Right. No.
especially a kid with Down syndrome, because I mean, you know the struggle that it has to go, and the attention to detail that you have to have a kid with Down syndrome. So
Sure.
that's amazing to hear. So what was that like for you to be able to grow up with your brother?
Sure. Yeah. And it is, like you said, it's amazing in that you feel certainly very connected. And so that helped a lot. And they kept our names, which are the ones we have. So my name's Moshe, for those that always want to know how to pronounce it. But I've heard every variation. And my brother's name, Maurice. And so the first few years, of course, being as young as we were, you don't know anything from anything except that, okay, he's a little bit more temperamental than even most kids. But for those who've ever dealt with Downs, it's a birth defect that kids are born essentially with an extra chromosome in the gene. And so in the more severe cases, usually by even the equivalent of first grade, they're having major issues with milestones, being able to go to the bathroom by themselves, feed themselves, brush their teeth correctly, and certainly even get on a school bus requires a lot of pushing and encouraging and coaxing. Keyword candy, comic books, Hawaiian Punch. I know nobody on here knows anything about that, but
I got some old heads around here that
exactly. Might be a couple. So and there were times he'd wander off, and so you have that element. And certainly there are definitely times he'd throw his temper tantrum, and when he's not moving, when they're not going to do anything, you can only just love, laugh, smile, try, because when they dig their heels in. But of course, those behaviors in general don't really stop, as most kids might work through that at 8 or 9, or maybe in their teens, or even adults that have severe mental retardation. They really still stay at about maybe 4 or 5 years old in his case. And so to this day, he needs to have a family with him. It's just not safe. Starting fires that happened a few times, getting lost and we not know where he is because he's wandered off. We're at an event, let's say at church, and we're all there doing different things and performing. And wait, where's Maurice? And you get a call from the police department, 6 or 7 hours later. But ultimately, he could often find his way home if the police didn't find him. Amazingly, they have a great homing sense. So definitely a different experience. But he loved music. I love music. So that's what we bonded on. And we'd spend hours, as kids from 6 to 26. I stayed at home almost till 30, listening to everything, on the radio and everything in between.
Right. So I mean, I want to delve into that a little bit more. So you said your adopted mother she was a nurse, right?
Right.
And then so she had an understanding of kind of how to deal with medical issues and things like that. But you as a young kid, and your brother is struggling, did that help you develop patience, or how did your bond develop? Because did you think, okay, I need to be there for my brother, because we're coming to a space where just he and I are all we got right now,
Right.
or was it a thing that sometimes you have I've talked to people that have issues and they get kind of frustrated, so how did your patience develop, being able to deal with your brother, or was it just an automatic bond you had?
Sure. No, it's a very perceptive question. So one comment bragging on moms is she took care of something called Tay-Sachs kids, not something, but some children that have that. Very rarely heard of in our community because it actually affects young Jewish kids. That's how she got from the South to the North, because as I said, I grew up in Brooklyn and that's where she was living at the time. So it was very common many times for midwives and nurses and people that wanted to do private care. Nursing is what they call it today. It's home health, to work with special needs kids. So certainly she developed a lot of patience and learned a lot, because Sabachu, those kids only make it a couple of years. Their defects are so severe that almost no child with Tay-Sachs makes it till even teenage years. So much so that today most parents have aborted those kids, Sabachu, because it really is difficult on the family. It's nothing but a decline into death in a very short period of time, which would be a strain. So for sure, dealing with his personality, we'll put it that way, tantrums, put another way, helped. And then I often share, because I have no false modesty, I worked as a waiter most of my life. I put myself through college, medical school, grad school,
Really?
and that will teach you patience like no other doing with the public. You get 2 cents literally from people after they've had you run back to the kitchen 18 times and still keep your smile about you when other people are losing theirs. You're on your feet 8, 10, 12 hours for the shift, and then another 3 or 4 hours to clean up the restaurant till 1, 2 in the morning. And then we'll have to walk home because there's no public transportation.
Wow.
And we don't get in no cabs in New York.
No, the cab just kind of drive past.
Exactly.
Brothers, you can't get enough of the cabs. You can't get in the cab, so you got to take transportation.
Exactly, not in Brooklyn. So it was definitely, and I didn't mind. I mean, I loved it. I mean, the fact that I could make $25 in a day and a night, sometimes $100, $200 in a week on the side. I mean, I was rolling in dough and jingling lots of coins, of course, but happy to put out my pennies and quarters to get my comic books and the other things I wanted.
Right. So you developed that kind of hustle, and I'm sure seeing your adopted mom and your mom that was in nursing, that kind of shapes you to say, here, me, I want to be of service to people. I want to help other people, and so you end up raise enough money for you to go to Cornell.
Right.
Like that's not shabby. One of the kids that I coached, Terrence Crawford. I mean, Terrence Caldwell. He is going to Cornell on a football scholarship. Wow. So shout out to Cornell.
Sure.
Get a brother, got another brother going to Cornell.
Right. We're not Division I though. Never will be. There's a reason why we're in a league of their own.
It's Ivy League. it's all good.
Exactly.
But I mean, tell me about from a kid that was adopted that has to work his way up to have dreams of going to a school like that. I mean, the majority of kids, they come from that kind of background, especially in Brooklyn, in the concrete jungle, you're around, like, they're like, no way I'm going to Cornell. I'm going to JC.
Exactly.
How did that develop in your head to say, I want to go to the best of the best?
Sure. And it wasn't there, to be honest with you. I don't want to try to take on some, oh, wow, he had such a vision. The vision was to go into medicine for all the reasons that you were able to tease out, between having a brother who had severe special needs and then having a mom that took care of not only him, but also us. And seeing that, it definitely primes you. There's no doubt about it. So at about 14 or so, I said to her that I was want to do something in health. And she was very practical, as many people in the South are. She's like, you want to do this and you want to work? Go to the local hospital. And, it sounds silly, but when you have a mom's like that, you take her seriously. I'm like, that's literally what I did. I went and walked 7 blocks to the local hospital. And I said, my mama says, and I'm 14 years old and I could work here and do something. I knew it was, of course, they had whatever you call it, work during the summer application for kids. There's some process now that has a formal name online, but back then that's literally how it was done. And they have to have volunteers, but still on the hustle. Patients would say, oh, you got a few minutes, go get me some cigarettes, which of course they shouldn't have been saying. That's why they wanted me to do it. Everybody got caught with the goods. They're in my pocket. Patient, hey, I don't know why Lewis is smoking cigarettes. So I run their stuff, but then again, same thing, a quarter here, $1 there. And so even though I was a volunteer, but over time, and of course I meant getting some food, and we're only up to no good things, but patients know how to work it. And so you'd run the errands for people and things like that. But the nurses would start telling me a few things. The doctors would start saying, hey, I want you to come into the operating room, because obviously you're not going to run errands all day. It's not what you came here for. And little by little, the hospital, the church that we went to, shout out there to Concord Baptist, church still around, been around now since I want to say 1870s. I'm still standing. And so they say it takes a village. And this is the God's honest truth. People would, here's $1 here if you get the newspaper, here's $5 because you graduated junior high, and here's $10 because you're going to high school. Forget we weren't even at college at that level. And people of the church will always, and I'm sure listeners and you may be able to relate to that, somebody was always saying, I see my grandson in you. I didn't get to have kids, but my son's gone on and done good things. I think you can. I believe in you. And that not only touches you, but it's $1, it's a quarter, but it's worth $1 million. And people are sitting there saying, I think you can do this. And again, we weren't, there was no Cornell at the table. They were starting to put those dollars in the pocket when I was a teenager, you know?
Wow.
All of that kind of really shaped sort of me saying, okay, this isn't easy. It's not a lot of fun. No one's going to try to make it sound like studying is a joy, but I got to be serious because these people, they say they think I can do this. I don't know what this is, but something in health.
Well, you know what, that's amazing because we always preach about that here on the show. But if somebody believes in you, somebody gives you an opportunity, and you take advantage of it. You know, the hard work is the work. There is no easy path. That you can't be successful without the work. You know, and you know, for you humbling yourself, say, I'm gonna just work and put it in. People believing in me, and I'm gonna go as far as I can, succeed as the most that I can. You know, with the skills that God has given me. It's amazing to see that. I mean, because we talk about that. You know, I brought up Cornell, but then you also went to Juilliard, and you studied Juilliard. Like, what is that? Like, if you put in a roadmap, I told my kid here, y'all get out of school and you get your school paid for somehow. And but you at Cornell and Juilliard, that just to start off. I mean, we're just getting started. So
I know, and it sounds.
How did that come about? I mean,
exactly, and it does, and believe me, even as this story was coming true and things like that, and you hear this so many times when celebrities tell you about winning a contest or doing this or doing that, and we didn't have any of that kind of thought that it was anything so miraculous. But as various accomplishments would happen, you would go, gosh, that we couldn't have imagined that. So mom played the piano, and that's where this whole music and medicine concept really began. She'd play, you know, at the church when she had time. She'd play at home. It wasn't a full-time job or anything like that, but that was how she brought solace to her heart, kind of growing up in the church and things like that. And so, you know, I turned to her, same thing. By that time, I was only 6 or 7 years old. And I'm like, you know, I want to do the same thing too. Because, you know, I see it in my kids. I'm sure you see it in yours. It's not saying, okay, tomorrow they'll actually enter your exact avocation. But we are constantly priming our kids, whether we realize it or not. You know, code word for know better, do better. If we're doing good things, by definition, they're going to be inspired to do good things. We'll make mistakes. They may make mistakes. We may get detoured here or there. But that vision of, hey, my dad, you know, really is impressive, and look at what he's doing with his life. He's a stand-up gentleman. He's a father that's present. He's doing shows that really try to uplift the community. I got to come straight. And if it takes me 20 years to figure it out, or 30, you know, but I can't say that, you know, my dad wasn't there. So, you know, that's one of the things I admired you from jump when we started touching base, is just it comes across in, you know, everything you do, the pictures, your connection with your family, and the whole family on top of that. But in this scenario, I started playing when I was 7. She took me up on it, saying, hey, okay, if you want to play, you're going to have to take lessons. And so somebody at the church volunteered. But there's this little bit of a, how shall we say it, business goes on, you know, even in the church, right?
Right.
The Lord said, let's not have money there.
Always.
Exactly. So we're going along from about 7 till about 9, 10 years old. And the piano teacher is like, you know, he's doing pretty good, but I have a friend, code word my cousin, who is a singing teacher, and I think he can sing. And my mom, you know, she grew up in the South. She lived in New York a few years. She's like, but, you know, you can't hustle. You know, I'm trying to raise these kids. The church trying to help me. These kids are out here selling newspapers and running errands for patients that don't have any legs. You know, I know one when I see it coming. He can't sing. He can't carry a tune. And so, and she's like, and she said, it's amazing, you know, you want to be a salesperson? And she's probably, I don't know, 72 at the time. You never know. That's what she said to my mom. That's all she said. She said, I'm not trying to come with a hard sale. I'm not going to sit here and give you 3 hours in the car dealership and see if you spend $10,000 more than you plan to. You never know. So, you know, that sunk in with my mom. So next thing you know, I've got these 2 teachers, and so they both had their plans. And so for the piano teacher, it was that we would go to, then they called it Cami Hall, which is right next to Carnegie. It's literally their recital theater in Carnegie Hall. And we would do our concerts every single year. And several, as I've reached and met more music teachers, several of them still do this in various cities. And so, so she was already trying to prime us for, you know, bigger things like towards Lincoln Center. Meanwhile, the voice teacher is like, I'd like you to start doing some auditions. Meanwhile, of course, I've been singing in Italian, German, other languages I don't even know, Russian, for years, from whatever time I started with her, 8 or 9 years old, till about 11, 12, because that's the language she sung in. Of course, we sang some classical things from back then. You do Broadway plays and those kind of musicals and things like that. Porgy and Bess, all those kinds of things might be appropriate for kids, my favorite things. But she works at a small little theater company called Lincoln Center. So when I go and do my big audition that they've kind of been priming for years, and for me, it's just another, hey, you've been riding a bicycle, and now we're moving on to a motorcycle, and now we're moving on to stunts. It is an audition for Juilliard on the piano side and the Metropolitan Opera Lincoln Center on the other side. And so by the time I was, in high school, I was essentially at both. I was at Juilliard studying piano and doing piano competitions, and at the Metropolitan Opera and Lincoln Center performing at two theaters. They have the New York City Theater, and then they have the Met. They're literally side by side in Lincoln Center. And I would literally pretty much work year round because the two theaters parallel their schedules. So you name it, all those foreign languages came in handy because every single opera with a kid I have been in, and done tons of shows. And so to say the least, it kept me busy because that was pretty much my night. My day was in school.
Wow. All right, I gotta put in the break real quick. It's not gonna be the official break, y'all. It'll be the break where I can insert the commercial. My producer will insert the commercial, but this is Know Better, Do Better with Ray Leonard Jr. We'll be right back. And we're back. So
I love that commercial.
Yeah.
You have a
be way longer, but they get to see the whole background. They got my Star Wars background in the back right now, or whatever. But it's all good. So they get to see it because I want to delve into that a little bit. Now you talk about prestigious. I mean, the Juilliard and the Met. So what was it like for people that aren't from New York, that don't understand? What was it like your first time performing at the Met? I mean, it's one of the most historic landmarks and places to ever perform at. So what was that like your first time?
Right. Well, thank goodness. And it sounds silly, but I was a kid. You have a stage mother. And as whatever you want to consider that to be maternalistic, it helps because this is a place where there's certain places you shouldn't wander and head on down to that person's dressing room or be backstage when you're not supposed to be backstage, or stay on set too long because things are moving literally all over the place, and kids literally, and we were seen as that, can get hurt literally and emotionally because somebody may yell at you like, what the hell are you doing here? I mean, we're in New York and this was the 70s and 80s. So people, all that PC stuff that we do today, it was more like scrambling off the set, you can get run over. So definitely big, intimidating, auspicious to say the least. Juilliard, by comparison, was much more, and this is some of what little by little kind of drove me away from just trying to do concert pianist. If it's not obvious, and certainly everybody that knows me knows, I can't shut up. I love people. I can't stay away from people, and I can't not interact. Whether it's my patients, whether it's my friends, and certainly, obviously, family and people become friends. They quickly, this kid's got a lot to say. So on that note, sitting and playing 4, 5, 6, sometimes 8, 9, 10 hours, and it's not something that often comes out, but I'm just very honest about it, not as a sign of weakness. It's just, for me, it can maybe work for other people. But I found the Juilliard experience, by comparison, very isolating. You really spend a lot more time than even I was spending. I was just doing maybe 2 or 3 hours of practice, but here it really becomes a full day. You get up in the morning, head to the practice theater, and since I play piano as my main thing, I've done violin, I've played flute, but those are pretty isolationist too, unless you're with an orchestra, and you can't be with the orchestra unless you practice. So despite those instruments, which were great, and I loved them, and still love the piano to this day, with time I realized when I got into Cornell, they really sort of that whole concert pianist and playing and doing competitions and traveling and maybe performing for or with very big singers, which some of my friends have gone on to do, really wasn't going to probably fit with me. I would be a little bit too lonely and too isolated to see the audience there. With the theater, of course, with the Met, by contrast, when you're out and about after shows, during shows, you're on stage. It's very rare, especially as a younger person. I was there technically from the age of about 10 to my teen years. There's always, there are young people my age. Most productions that have kids in them have kids, anywhere from 2 to 5 to sometimes 50, depending on how big the show is, like Hansel and Gretel, Carmen, and things like that. There's others that are smaller, like Bohème, might only have 6 or 7 kids in it. And then some where it's only 1, like Amal and the Night Visitors. So needless to say, and when we were rehearsing, whether it was dress rehearsal, I mean, it was a blast. It was like being on any set, which I still love to this day. There's tons of people around. You're running into people who, you know, are household names then, today, that may not be as well known amongst the younger crowd. But you're constantly literally bumping into people that you've seen on TV, or seen in a TV show, or see them when they're doing the broadcast. And then certainly in the opera world, you're working with all, you know, with all the greats. And so it was always, you know, and then people were constantly taking pictures. So you could go in as a kid, you love looking at pictures, especially if you're in it, like, oh, wow, look at me on that set, and look out the audience. So a lot of feedback. And of course, as soon as the show is over, everybody's coming to see the stars and saying, oh, you were great. So constant reward and interaction with the public and with the performers, and so much going on. And so that I love that world.
Wonderful. Hey, parents, step your game up. Here, you got an adopted kid. He had a brother with Down syndrome. He's in Brooklyn, New York, and he went to Cornell, he went to Juilliard, and performed at the Met. That's just a start. We just getting started. So step your game up. So if you have the opportunity, anything is possible, no matter what background you come from. That's the whole reason why we talk about this. No matter what background you come from, and we're just getting started, because after you got your bachelor's from Cornell, you decided to go to Harvard and study immunology. I didn't say correctly.
Right. So yeah. So
how does that happen? Okay, from Cornell to Harvard and Juilliard. I mean, we are moving forward right now. Like, you are on a path that say, here, if I'm gonna hitch my tag to somebody that's gonna be a star, that's gonna do well, that's gonna contribute to society. This guy, Moshe Lewis, is who I'm going to hitch it to.
Sure. Well, I mean, the same thing too, relatively accidental. And I don't want to make it sound like I got a big degree from there. It was literally a stepping stone, and that's no insult to how great Harvard is. At the time, one of the great leaders, and a lot of people know of his work with the Cosby Show, Alvin Passant, was the doctor there, and put together a phenomenal program to bring kids from the inner city, and certainly who had, even if they had gone to good schools, and many people went to all kinds of schools that came there, not saying one's better than the other, but for sure, this was that chance and sort of that last little push to say, if you were thinking about going to medicine, don't think, as you are saying, that the world can't be your oyster, that there's something you can't accomplish. Because I'm sitting here at one of the top institutions, again, it's Dr. Passant, I mean, essentially in terms of his mantra. I have gotten a chance to meet him and talk with him, but the point being that he saw, hey, I'm here, I pull you up, you pull other people up, and make sure they help other people pull up, just like the kind of work that you do. And so that really, I think, for so many of us, even though you would think, okay, you've got a degree from Cornell, or some of the people have gone to all kinds of great schools, Howard and University of Miami and so forth, IBs, non-IBs, JCs to UCs and things of that nature. You still need that constant encouragement. And here it was happening at even that bigger level, where when you walk those halls and you see other people that look like you, because we know the history of an institution like that, there was a time where, forget it, certainly women not going, but for us to be able to walk on the campus even of any Ivy, forget Cornell, but certainly a place like Harvard. So you're hit with all that. And just in case you got lost, because maybe you did grow up in a different life where you grew up in the burbs and you walk like, you're definitely holier than thou and things like that. And sometimes that happens. And it's great when people can have a sheltered life where they have every wish and silver spoon. But just in case you had that life, they really spent a lot of time when we had some downtime on campus, really talking about the mission and why we were truly there. We were there to, like I said, make sure that we went on to medical school or whatever level of higher training, and to not lose any hope or fear that we could get that grad or that PhD. And more importantly, to make sure that we continue to preach that story of, hey, I need to help other people get in. So all during that time, while I was at Cornell, while I was at Harvard, although that was not even a full year, because then I got into NYU, I continued to have undergrads, and even to this day, still have undergrads that rotate in our clinic. We may have anywhere from 12 to 50 in a year with me in the clinic. When I was in medical school, I'd tell my professor, hey, is my week to have students? Is that cool? We bring the students in, 2 or 3 of them, and let them see what is it like to sit in a medical school class. So certainly, big thanks to people like Dr. Passant, who put programs like that together, for us, and helped us form tremendous friendships, but more importantly, take on the task of applying to medical school, which is what I did after I went to NYU.
So we yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about your education because we're gonna have to move forward to all the amazing stuff you've done. But I want to get into your education a little bit more because I have kids that are going to school. I know a lot of people that are listening to the show have kids that are going to school, and so they want to understand, how important education is. You have 3 master's degrees. You have an MD, MPH, and an MBA. So tell us about why you were so focused on your education and where you got these degrees from, and what was your focus? Was it just to get the degree, or was it saying, okay, here, this is my thought process of where I'm going, and I want to have the education to move forward in my career?
Sure. Well, definitely more of the latter. And you hit the nail on the head. That woman that we mentioned early on, her name was Ruby, and she said another degree and I'd be a thermometer. So there was a certain point where she's like, you need to get a
you way up top. You are 101 degrees.
Exactly right. So she's like, I need to get a job. So by that time I was done with all those degrees, I was almost 30. So I did what she said. She pretty much almost lived literally to the day that I graduated medical school. And I planned, because some people know that we're both out here in California. And Lily had already made arrangements to bring her out here because I definitely wasn't going to leave New York, which is why all those schools pretty much are in New York, or Boston's pretty much almost down the block. But long story short, it really was trying to make sure that I would be able to really basically be of service to the community at the time. And we may get into this with the whole COVID thing. HIV was huge, which is part of what I was getting into when we were up at Harvard. I mean, it's hard to remember, but that was the time at which we were still trying to really figure a lot about HIV out, the same way that we're still doing this now with COVID. So there were tremendous parallels. And so I thought, gosh, I need to really have a master's in public health because this is what really affects my community, even as relates to that disease. Initially, many people may remember, without trying to bring up old wounds, that it was really seen as a gay disease. But we know anytime there's a pretty big undertaking when it comes to a disease going on, that our community will be affected the greatest, or certainly significantly. And again, all those lessons, when you spend time with Dr. Bassan, and we could go on with lots of household names that were my mentors, Carl Sagan and Henry Louis Gates, and people of that nature who've been at these institutions and whose lectures I've gone to, you really sort of absorb that. Okay, I could have continued to stay in that apartment building that my mom, left me in and died. I got rescued. I got a good chance on a second chance on life, but I got to pick it up and figure out how to stand on my own because this woman won't be around forever. And more importantly, I got to give something back to literally probably upwards of almost maybe 2,000 people that got me this far. So it was with that these kind of, get this degree, lock this down so that no one, and I think this goes to your theme message, and I'll wrap it up, no one can ever take your education away from you. And once you have it, beyond the confidence that it brings, you also know there's nothing I can't do. I don't have to worry about getting a job, because if I have to work as a waiter tomorrow or a painter or whatever, I've done it.
You already did it.
No problem. There's no shame. I gotta work at McDonald's. Okay, hey, sign me up. I'll do what I have to do. So the hustle doesn't leave, but more importantly, that confidence and self-assurance of I can really help people. I kind of sort of skated through law school, and I hope I can help this person on this case. No, I have no doubt. And that's some of what they instilled. So that was really some of the degrees, but really also wanting to be able to work with the community in HIV. So as you said, as we move along and kind of pick it up, did a lot of research with that by the time I was in medical school. That's at Mount Sinai, which is also in New York. Again, staying there to stay close to my mom, who's now well into her 80s. I'm presenting her cases to our medical school class, which rarely happens, but it's because I'm going into surgery with her for life-threatening surgeries that we hear about all the time, like an aneurysm, which, our beloved Dr. Dre just went through. So I was going through this in medical school with my mom. So I asked the professor, like, hey, we're doing pathology class. I want to present this case because besides the fact that I'll learn, I think the class will take it very seriously that one of their classmates is going through this, like right now, this real case. We're not reading about it in a book. I'm sitting in an operating room tonight with her holding her hands going, she may not make it. So I'm very familiar with diseases like that, and just took that bravado to say to the teacher, I know you have some things to educate, and don't get me wrong, I don't know everything, but I have been in school a bit, and I'd like to educate the class about this real case.
Yeah, I've been in school. I got 3.
Exactly. So those are the kind of cases I was often, presenting, even again, not ones we were asked to present, I would just ask them to do it. And so, nevertheless, getting through all of this really allowed me to kind of, I say, find my calling, but also develop that confidence to be able to lead and take care of patients. Because again, at the time, we thought, as many people thought with COVID and felt initially those first few months, this is the beginning of the end. I mean, people are dying left and right from we don't really fully understand, and it's exactly where we were with that HIV. So that education kind of helped, me develop that confidence.
Wonderful. And I want to get into one more question about
Sure.
you and your education and some of your early work experience before we move on to talking about COVID and the vaccines, and then, kind of what we're working on together, different stuff in the next couple segments. But, before we go into a quick break, you had one excerpt in your bio, and it said you worked at NASA also. if it wasn't enough that you were at Juilliard, the Met, at Harvard, NYU, Cornell, then you worked at NASA too.
I honestly, I didn't even.
Who designed your path?
It's not. There's no design. You see how chaotic it is.
Live in Brooklyn and go through all this, and then have this path. I think you're inspiring other kids, other people to say, you know what? No matter where you come from, what's your background, the opportunity is there. You just have to take advantage of it. So tell us about the NASA experience.
Right, sure. Yeah, and that like I said, I honestly didn't even realize that was in there, because you guys know behind the scenes, people write this and you press send and send it off and things like that. And I keep meaning for that to not be put in there because it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't to me anyway. But
it was cool though.
Right, but it was cool, and it was an amazing experience. So with that, you did hint at the fact that I have an MBA, and of course we've got to do a project. And just like anyone, and has always been the case, I ran around to people I know and said, oh, do you have a job or project or something that I could do, because it can't just be I'm going to open up a lemonade stand, or I'm going to follow the next, startup company or try to make one. I mean, that's what everybody does and things like that. And there's nothing against that, but I didn't know anybody that could tell me about how to do a lemonade stand or start a startup. So anyway, in whatever, connecting with people, someone said, well, you can apply with this group called Manpower, and they were looking for clinical people to work on special projects. And that's all they said it was a special project. I'm like, okay, that sounds good to me, because maybe it'll be different enough. So anyway, you go into the interview and you don't really realize, it sounds silly, but you don't, especially when you're dealing with the kind of clearances you need to work there as a civilian. Again, all humility to those who provided service. I see vets now 2 days a week still to this day, because of the time that I've had to work with the military, but I can't pretend to say that I've been in the military. And so anyway, that in that assignment, they were actually looking for clinical people to not only look at some of the payloads and the things that they would go up on to the space station and things of that nature, but also there are a lot of people may not realize human experiments. And when people hear that, they may get scared, but we're talking about in terms of different diseases, products that go up, vaccines, all these types of things are being tested in outer space, and how things can manage and survive and make it, and how they are able to be transported from that world to here. And then also on a more real level, believe it or not, patient safety. The aeronautical industry has been used a lot to figure out how to have hospitals and mechanistic things that we do in hospital settings run smoother, because if there could be any greater experience of not messing up and saving people's lives and making sure they come back intact, it doesn't get greater than sending somebody to outer space. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of what they call shared learnings. They translate between still, in this case, the Veterans Affairs that I'm still working with, and NASA at that time. Obviously, it's changed a little bit to the private sector, of course. But again, amazing to walk into rooms where you don't even know who will be there or what the meeting is about, sometimes until the night before or that morning when you're briefed, and you're sitting there and discussing these types of things, or you're meeting at a nuclear missile base or things of this nature. I mean, it certainly blows your mind, the kind of conversations that you're sitting there saying, can I really be up to speed? But all of those steps that we talked about, studying, hustling, working, putting in those extra hours, getting inspired by, the Dr. Passants and Dr. Gates out there, kind of make you go, hey, if I got to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning to be up to speed on this strategic payload and present, that's what I got to do. I only got, a day or two to prep. And all of us have been in some type of situation, or many of us, where you're called on to sing a song, perform, lead a team, win a game. And, you didn't always have tons of prep, but you did. You did from the time you were 8 years old practicing. You did from the time you were 16 years old getting hurt. You did from the time you were 22 years old making a mistake. And now here you're 28 or 32, and now it's really game on, and you can do it. But that confidence and those mistakes and that experience help you to be able to walk in there and have those conversations, even though secretly you're like, how the hell? I'm sitting here with
how did this happen? Right. Right. Awesome. But and I want to come in because next thing I want to talk about, the vaccines and the pandemic and all that kind of stuff that's happening right now. But we got to put a quick commercial break in, and guys know how quickly that last break went. So this is No Better, Do Better. I'm Ray Leonard Jr. We'll be right back. And we're back again. So
I love that. I got to get that program for any commercial TV that I watch.
Greatest commercials ever. I do voiceovers and do the whole thing. So don't worry about it.
I got it down.
So, one of the big things that I want to talk about is because, this is part of, your specialty in which you're in. The vaccines, COVID has really taken a toll on our community, taken a toll on everybody pretty much. From businesses like me, I had my small business was hurt tremendously by COVID, but we're coming back with just no stress and worries because like you said, the hustle was the hustle. If you stay in, you keep in the game, you keep moving forward, you'll figure it out. But a lot of people in our community are scared to death about vaccines, and rightfully so, because you had Tuskegee experiment, you had the issues that the jabs were given to the women, that were sterilizing the women. Me as a Black person, first and foremost, I'm just telling you straight up. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this vaccine. My kids had to get vaccinated to go to school, and I'm like, I don't know. We gonna try to figure it out at the last minute. But this vaccine had come so fast for something that we have no idea about. And I know a lot of my audience has asked me, they've been sending questions in like, should I take it? What should we do? And everybody has their own personal experience. But you as an immunologist and knowing about that, what do you think about vaccines in general? And then I want to address you about the actual COVID vaccines that are out there, because there's so many different ones that have come to fruition right now. So, vaccines in general, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. And I had hinted it a little bit, and it's just again, I'll always be paying homage to my mom in saying that she was in Tuskegee, and that's where she came from. Her birth year is 1906, and that's not a shout out to the Alphas per se, because I'm not trying to go there. But that
love. You got Alpha.
No, I'm not an Alpha, but that's that year, 1906. So I bring that up not because of them, but because she was in not only a city like Tuskegee, but New Booker T. Washington at that time. This is during the time that he lived. So to say the least, a lot of what happened there is certainly very, still in my mind because of her. And everybody's always close to their mom, especially in our community, no matter what. Nobody says anything about their mama, right? So that burns very bright. Yet we've come such a long way. Since that time, we have doctors like Dr. Corbett who worked on this. And so all that to say that because it's so significant in our community, and because it is something that certainly gives, especially our greatest at risk patients, the seniors, people in nursing homes, people who are severely immunocompromised, 65, 75, 85, 90-year-olds, this ability to not have to worry as much. Now, that said, there will always be fears when something develops this quickly. But we feel like it's also what we call some of the sign of the times. We're now in a world where that can happen a lot faster. And of course, the experiments were contracted down, meaning that everything was done in a way, normally you would send it off to the FDA or send it off to the various organizations, and it could take weeks or months to be approved. And that's the part that really was compressed, as well as also being able to do a lot of the experiments that were happening with patients sort of more real time. So in other words, we were able to look at some of the safety of, okay, how safe is the vaccination? And also let's look at the patients at the same time. So you're really able to sort of move that timetable up. And sad but true, and it is a reality, there's this seriousness to it. And I think we see it already. We're at a time of the year now, it's February when we're taping, And normally we'd just be coming down sort of towards the end of the flu season. We've seen very few cases of flu this year by comparison. And we've already seen a tremendous drop off in the COVID cases, which were spiraling up, right, pretty much till after the holidays. And so we know that a big part of that is due to the vaccinations that are happening, not only across our country, but in the world. It can be scary to take it on, meaning, okay, what about me and me getting a shot? That sounds cool, Dr. Lewis. I know you got this education out there, and I didn't misspeak that. It is sometimes the way we say it, education. And that's all cool. And you don't have a tie or white coat on today, and that's cool too. You're trying to be hip, but not this brother, not today. I understand. We're almost at upwards of 30 million people that have received it. When you look at even the number of deaths by comparison, and again, these are people who've gotten the vaccination. Whether we look at Hank Aaron, we can't try to dismiss that under the rug. I've got a chance to meet him, touch base with him, and things of that nature. Literally, it's very serious. Not trying to imply that he died of it. It was 2 or 3 weeks after the fact, but I do know there was a close proximity, so people are always going to be concerned. But that number compared to the number of people we're losing. And so many times in life, I tell people, right now, as things stand today, if the vaccination could be available to you and you're in your 40s and you're not high risk, you literally are in a position to say, well, I'm not as high risk. I don't work in a nursing home. I'm not a medical person. I'm not that old. I don't have too many medical things. I'd like to learn more and wait and see and get maybe some more vaccinations done to people, another 10, 20 million before I make my decision. But if you work in healthcare, if you're around a lot of people, you work in an Amazon plant, you work on the front lines, you're a school teacher, I think many of those people sense this is something I can't take too lightly because I do live with mom at home, or I'm taking care of daddy, or I really do want to go see my aunties. It's been over a year, and I am 54, I am 61. I'm at really greater risk of getting this and not being able to get the help that I normally could get. And we certainly saw that with the doctor that was in, I want to say, Indiana, even in the hospital. She was a doctor. I want to say it was Dr. Williams. I don't want to misspeak her name. I didn't honestly look it up before today's program again. I was reading her story a couple of months ago. But we need our community to put their faith and their hope, not only in the Lord, which we know we come from a praying community, but to realize this is that rowboat, this is that lifeboat that's coming, especially if you're at high risk. And I always ask people, and it's not to be facetious, what are the numbers you need? If you need to see that 40 million people have been vaccinated and that the number of deaths are minimal, 50 million, we're going to hit those targets. So there comes a certain point at which, again, I think people at the end of the day have to look at their risk, realize that we're in a very different world than was, in the Tuskegee times. We have a lot more of us who have gone to degrees and gone to what they say are these institutions of higher learning. We can speak the King's English now. We know science, and many of us are dedicated to not only get the word out, but to say, we didn't go in medicine to try to deceive you. We wanted to be in the room, like we like to say on Hamilton. I want to be in the room where it happens, so that there wouldn't be no shenanigans and some nurse, potentially selling us out, or some doctor saying, oh, they'll be okay if they don't really get the treatment. No, we are there developing it, administering it, taking it ourselves, watching like hawks, and trying to report back that, we really want to save, our community's lives as much as possible. And it's too risky for our seniors and our super seniors to just kind of wing it and kind of rely on Dr. Google as the way to say, look, but so-and-so said this, versus I'm going to ignore the data and my people who are out there on the front lines trying to, help me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, and I always trip out about people talking about the vaccines. I understand the history of it, but like you said, we are represented in the room where it happens now. So it is a little different. And then we even have people that are developing the actual vaccines, Black people that are developing the vaccines, so that folks don't even know that. It's a whole nother thought process when you see it. But you look at it, your kids have to get vaccinated to go to school. So the conspiracy theorists is out there. I understand being cautious and make sure that you're protected. But at the end of the day, how do we move forward from the pandemic? Because there's going to be more pandemics. This is not a one-off. You know, everybody's saying that, this is maybe a once in generation disease. We've had the swine flu, we've had the Ebola, we've had all this stuff coming in. It's how we handle it, right? So, the thought process about that, and even the sister that developed for, I think it was for Pfizer. I think the sister developed the vaccine for Pfizer. So can you go into that and the thought process behind that about more pandemics coming? And so if you say, okay, I'm not going to get this vaccine, there may be something else that's going to come up and snatch you by the butt.
Sure. No, absolutely. So we like to call it the Rona, affectionately, not trying to pick off the beer, but there have been lots of corona type viruses, and some of the flu viruses have elements of that in it. So it's not new. And so you'll hear in conspiracy theory often taking a fact or an isolated fact. And to me, your show ties this together so well, since we did spend a lot of time on education or edumacation. Get the knowledge yourself firsthand. Go to primary sources. Do the work and the research, because every person I speak to that's willing to do that starts to realize where some of the theories break down. It's very easy to let fear and let a spirit of fear decide or have us determine what we're going to do. We don't want our community to be going based on fear. Sit and read the facts. If you can actually read the data, read the facts, look at the studies, look at the number of people who have been vaccinated, look at those results, look at how the vaccine was developed and where and the kind of companies, and still say, I still can't trust it because it's something historical, I understand. But I tell people, again, do those facts, do that homework, and really understand how you're making your argument, as opposed to quoting, as sources that you can't say, well, let me look at their degrees, let me look at their education and things of that nature. So on that point, several of the doctors involved with the development of this vaccination at the CDC, working with Dr. Fauci and things of that nature, are from our communities. They've gone on to the radio, the TV, every place that they possibly can get a moment to do an interview, to implore, beg, plead, and let the community, like we said, they were there. They understand the process and things like that. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the stuff and film work we're doing behind that to try to also publicize who they are, because a lot of times it takes time for the message to get out. But having that safety and assurance, I think for most people, really lies in the numbers, relies in all the number of people that have had it, and they continue to have it, and how well they continue to do. And so it's very easy, I think, to be afraid, but don't let the unwillingness to understand the facts and the complexity of it, because the truth is that, like you said, we've had swine and Ebola and SARS and MERS and all types of viruses, and they're not going away. So to the second part of your question, you're right. We live in a world where the interchange of people, germs, diseases, and things like this, and now we see animals, is far greater than we ever wanted to admit. But we had always heard, like, oh, you might want to stay away from this type of food. You might not want to go to that establishment. And I don't want to call any names out, but there's not a year that goes by that we don't hear about a certain company or a certain restaurant chain or a certain set of products that are really not healthy, and then there's an outbreak. But for most of us, it doesn't affect us. Well, those were 6 people in Missouri. Well, they should have known not to eat that, because I know when you had a son on that chicken salad, But now, all of a sudden, and I'm not saying it's right what happened, but to the best extent that we understand, this mismatching of humans and other products and animals and things like that, and their DNA and bacteria and things like that, and viruses, isn't a good thing. And we know, these wet markets have existed and been dangerous for years. It's not new. So while it can be frustrating or annoying that it is spread, worldwide, this isn't the last time. It certainly isn't the first. And so we do have to take into consideration that this is a reality of what we live in, with the constant mixing that we do, traveling, zipping, zapping, touching this. And I always go back, and we'll leave it with this. Grandma quite some time ago was like, when I was growing up, and maybe true for you and several of our listeners, you need to wash your hands before you come to the table. After you've done A, B, C, and D in the bathroom, you need to wash your hands. You need to take off your feet and show a little respect and leave your shoes outdoors. Certainly for many cultures to this day, that is a sign of disrespect to even try to get to the table or try to get far into the house without having your shoes on. And the list continues on. If you're sneezing, you cover your mouth and things like that. Don't just sneeze all over the dinner table, because we're trying to have Thanksgiving here. So a lot of those things, and one of the many books that I've tried to write, but certainly at least one's done, is everything I need to learn about medicine, Grandma taught me. Very simple things,
Right.
And really, if we look at COVID, I mean, in terms of the things that people can do, if they say, I don't care how funny you guys are, or how much you guys get along, bromance, friendship, whatever you want to call it, I'm not buying none of it. It ain't work for me. I don't need 15 degrees. I'm not doing it. No problem. But I beg and implore our community to say, please explain to me that you don't think it's a good idea to do those things that our grandmothers have been telling us for years. Wash those hands when you step into that bathroom. Make sure you don't. They have done studies literally standing in the bathroom, in a stall, listening for the water faucet to go on and seeing how many people use the water faucet. Both sexes, of course, men are the worst. So we getting hit the hardest with this. But the list continues on. Before relations, when you done touch this, when you're mixing meats and fruits and vegetables and things of that nature, especially if they're raw, there are some basic, we have to be so careful about germs and spreading them and things like that I tell people, at least give me that. Don't be up on one another, sneaking into certain parties on the DL, pretending nobody knows. We were in a city that we won't mention just a few weeks ago. We won't mention, and a number of parties.
It's in the South. It's in the South.
It's somewhere somewhere in that area. So, needless to say, what we do in a secret will come out to light. Keep that distance, put on a mask, wash your hands, use sanitizer, be careful about what you're touching, be careful about stuff that you're eating, where it's been, where you've been, and things of that nature. At least that, if you're not into the vaccine thing, I can't be angry at you. Just want you to be safe, because those were never bad ideas, and grandma ain't never lied. Not about that.
So folks, hey, real simple. Don't be nasty. Like simple things. Like you look at it, and all the experts, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Lewis, I mean, everybody's saying here, don't be nasty. Just do the basic stuff. Wash your damn hands. Cover your mouth when you cough. Don't be out here spitting on people. Like if you touch like raw meat, wash your hands afterwards. Wear a mask when you're around somebody. Like simple things are the best mitigation. And that's crazy that as much as the vaccine and everything else that we're looking at, if you do simple mitigation things of not being nasty, then we have a better opportunity to keep ourselves and our families and our people safe. So with that being said, I got to take one more quick break, and then we're going to talk about what Dr. Moshe is doing right now, coming up right here, and all the things for the future. So, that's how we move. We know better, do better. This is Ray Leonard Jr. We'll be right back. And we're back. Once again, y'all like these commercial breaks on here because it's different than what the actual show was going to be, but you see in the background. So, Doc, welcome back, man. And you were spitting knowledge, talking about mitigation techniques, about about the vaccines, about how we can move forward past this once in a lifetime pandemic that they're talking about, and be prepared for the next one that may come in our lifetime again. So it may not be once in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime that's happening again, because as we're mixing human DNA with animal DNA and different things that the scientists are trying out to try to figure out how to mitigate some of these things, I only think it's natural that something a super bug or something may come out, because when you're trying to figure things out and you're using science, things can happen. So with the CDC, there have been some confusing stuff that has come out about what is going on with this disease or how we move forward. So what is your take? And from so a lot of people say scientists they don't know. But science is a moving target, I think. It's always searching for the truth. It doesn't have to be the truth at that moment, but it's what they know at the point in time. So what do you tell people about that before we go into what you're doing right now?
Sure, absolutely. So we see this all the time. And again, we can't help on the show but to push education. We've come to expect that a cell phone that I'm going to go buy today is probably going to function a little bit better than the iPhone 3. But when the iPhone 3 was out and when that was a jam, we had no concept at that time.
I had a two-way pager. Like that was a
could have 3 cameras on it and essentially replace 600 different devices, compasses, watches, video cameras, the list goes on, alarm clocks, reminders, all the apps and things go on and on. So in our lives, we tend to have accepted that cars are getting better over time, that, hopefully our love lives are getting better over time, things that we buy, things that we, interact with, we're learning more, whether it's, on a relationship level or in terms of things that we interface with, like our computers, our phones. And Sabbath True Science is that same way. Time allows it to get a lot more sophisticated. So it's very frustrating going along, step by step. The difference is that when we were dealing with dot matrix paper and trying to print something, we were like, hey, I can't read those last 2 lines of this paper.
Speak on it.
but it's due, and the professor says he wants it at 8 o'clock and it's 7:52. So I try to print it again. I'm gonna be late. So I'm just gonna turn it in and hope we can read it. Actually, I'll just use my pen and fill in those last 2 lines of words. I know, again, nobody out there can relate to that. But if you can imagine what it was like having a dot matrix printer. Today, the concept of printing, most people are like, I don't need to print it. It's in Adobe, I can download, I can upload, write load, DocuFax it, DocuSign it, Adobe PDF it, Pro Adobe, no problem at all. So the point being that we have continued to use technology to make tremendous advances that, just looking back even 10 or 15 years ago, would almost either not have been thought of or certainly not be believed that it would be so efficient. And so we're getting there with vaccines, and with a disease like this that's relatively new, at least in terms of some of its complexity. All I tell my docs is, meaning the people that are out there as spokespeople, let's admit where we're wrong and let's admit what we don't know. Some of that comes from the church. I'll be willing to admit that. That's where I grew up. That's where I come from. I don't believe that just because I'm a human who may have a couple of degrees or may have gone to a couple of schools that have some name to them, that I know everything. And so I'm the first to admit being wrong or not fully having all those answers, but constantly striving and hoping that my sincere search for the truth and trying to help my community comes across in my stumbles, in my falling down, in my serving as a waiter and maybe forgetting to bring that hot sauce ×6. I brought 2, but I didn't know we wanted one for every single person at the table. But I'm a human. Hold on, I'll be right back. Let me go get that for you. Understand, it definitely adds a lot of flavor to the food. I get it. I should have thought of that. So we saw that, to be more specific, with a lot of the recommendations. Truth be out there, we didn't have enough masks. So if you were reading up on the news and really following what was going on, we had just sent millions off to China so that we could help them out. We were sitting there going, well, that's their problem. At least, again, January, February, not trying to get into politics. Don't worry about it. So point is, we didn't have them. So, people at CDC were very reluctant to tell people, well, go out and get masks, because we already saw what's happening with toilet paper and everything else. People going crazy, literally losing their minds, buying up 3, 4, 5, 8 times, marking up prices for various things. And we saw that once things sort of became available, the thermometers and the gloves and the hand sanitizers were double, triple, quadruple the prices that once it became more available and they kept looking at the data and sort of started saying, you know what, we can't hold back much longer. We need to tell people that they should really wear a mask. And what did we see? We saw a great divide. People starting to talk about their constitutional rights and their need to not wear a mask because they had certain things they thought in that document helped support that. And scientists over here saying, we don't think that's the best idea. And so a lot of debate. And all I tell our community is that let's listen to the scientists and let's not listen to the people who are going to tell us about their rights, because while they continue to march on and can rely on dad or mom to make sure they get their vaccine or do what they need to do so they're healthy, we're sitting at the hospital, if we can get there, hoping that we'll get seen, trying to pick up the phone, trying to find a doctor who will take our call. The number of people in my community who told me, I got turned away. I got sent home. It was clear I was sick. We just had a case come out this week. Person died in the parking lot. He had been to hospital 3 times. So we don't usually get into the room like we were talking about earlier, the room where it happens. So we have to take those extra precautions and take this very seriously. And again, when we hear these recommendations, again, let's go figure it out for ourselves. Does this sound like something grandma might say that might be a good idea? Wash our hands or wear a mask or get the vaccine, or are they really trying to pull one on me? So again, I just think that those messages are very challenging to put out to the public, because as you tell them, let's do ABC, you get the pushback. Perfect example, the whole stay in. When that was going on, you had several countries and states saying, we'll take it out of the US where it's not political. We'll go to Sweden, where they said, we're not really going to follow that. We don't think it's necessary. So I tell people and ask them often, they may or may not know, but Sweden has 10 million people. Taiwan has 20 million people. And I don't know, I'll just ask you just to pick a number. Do you know about how many deaths Taiwan has with 20 million people that have COVID? How many deaths they have? Just picking any number.
I'm guessing close to 100,000, maybe.
Some close, right? So you're pretty close. They've had about eight.
Wow. Sheesh.
Because eight deaths, isn't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You're so close with 100,000. I like your math.
Exactly. But Sweden has had a few thousand deaths. It's just on the low thousands. But point being that they took it very seriously. They, have a female prime minister. We say anymore.
Oh, okay. There you go. Like New Zealand.
Right now, New Zealand, exactly. So point being that even in long before the vaccines were available, rather than spending a lot of time posturing about rights and safety and human indignity that's imposed by confusing science recommendations, let's play safe and super safe. And so that's all we say. You're going to see, evolving recommendations over time, especially as more information comes out. We don't have a full treatment out there yet. The vaccines are continuing to improve. We'll be going from 2 to 1 shot once the Johnson & Johnson vaccination gets approved, which will probably happen on Friday or later than Monday. So this is our lives we're used to in every other aspect. We expect that our car today can do things like save somebody's life, all love and good shout out to Tiger, that many years ago, a similar accident might not have wound up the same.
With all those airbags he had in there, they said they saved his life. To all of them deployed. So wow. I mean,
so that's the point, and we take it for granted. And that's a whole sermon of itself, and we won't try to hit that ball totally out of the park, but we take for granted that our cell phones are as amazing as they are, and we still, we got no Wi-Fi, man. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's a computer. I remember when I was in college, I had a brother typewriter, and I'm sitting there wasn't no. I had to go to the library and actually look stuff up. The Dewey Decimal System, I don't want to date myself or how old I am, but man, that's the reality. So now, everybody, you got stuff on here on your cell phone. It's like, okay, just take it for granted. Like you said, you take it for granted.
Exactly. And to wrap it up with virology without trying to make it a whole science lesson, back to where we sort of left off the educational story. So I'm there on the front lines, treating people who have HIV, writing numbers down and things like that, trying to collect data. And literally 2 or 3 weeks, if not months later, hearing, oh, that person's dead, you won't be able to get any more information. Fast forward, a year or 2 later, we were starting to see the numbers go down. We couldn't even believe that a drug had come out that could actually make the virus numbers go down and the CD4 count go up. And that alone was like, what kind of drug is it? Now, the very first drug, for those that remember the trivia of letters, AZT, was very toxic. And so we got a tremendous pushback on that. You're killing patients because some patients are dying on this, and it is a chemo agent and it kills a lot of cells. All those statements had truth in them. But yet, as we were doing the data and the research and things like that, this is Charles Drew down in LA, South Central, for those of you who may know Watts, where I was at that time. We couldn't believe it. And likewise, same thing now as we're getting these vaccines in people, and we're seeing people, 85 years old, 88 years old, 90 years old, making it through and becoming more survivors. And there's certainly plenty who made it through the illness long before the vaccines were developed. It's an amazing thing for us. So fast forward today, you tell somebody HIV, they might be a bit concerned that they,
you don't hear nothing about AIDS, you don't hear nothing about HIV. It's just gone.
Right. Magic Johnson proved to everybody that, okay, it's another chronic disease. And so it no longer strikes the same level of fear and concern and politicizing and, oh, that's that type of disease. And those people get it. It's more of, okay, I definitely want to take steps to not have it occur. But if it does, I don't need to jump out of the window or ask the police to shoot me, as has happened with some people that heard they have COVID. I'll know I can make it through. I know that and there's still no vaccine to this day for whatever it may be worth. We remember. So we've come a long way with a disease that was just as terrorizing and scaring in its own regard. So all that to say that we will see the same thing with this. So we ask people to really understand some of that history and appreciate that we're in that room, and you can certainly protect you and your family by getting vaccinated. But if you default on the latter, please don't assert with various types of flags your rights and how you shouldn't, like you said, wear a mask, stay safe, not get nasty, and wash your hands, because at least do that. that's all I tell people. Okay, I can't force you to get a vaccination, but I can at least beg you to keep it clean.
Yeah, don't wear a mask and don't be nasty. That's first and foremost. So in the last couple minutes, like I want to get to what you're doing now and what's coming down the pike, because you've been such an amazing guest to give us all your background. I know you even inspired so many people today, but I want to talk about what's next and what you're doing right now. And I know you got music and medicine going on. We got some stuff coming up. I mean, it's a lot to be excited about for the future. And 2020 is all over, and we are moving forward. I think we might be actually to go outside this year. So tell us what's happening. What's coming down the pike and what's happening this year.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we're excited to sort of marry these two worlds, which obviously are such a big part of my background that's continued on for a while, music and medicine. I'm taking some of my friends. I don't know how much people know you kept it on the DL a little bit more recently in the last couple of weeks, but maybe everybody knows you from a couple of years ago and knows about your musical background. But taking that.
Yeah. YouTube.
Covering exactly. He's out there. He's like, yeah, I don't want to brag, but just a couple of hits, couple of awards. But marrying that world. Yeah, marrying that world of music to medicine, because we feel that this not only can be a tremendous platform, like you did in your opening, talking about how it can be healing, supporting, encouraging. Maybe if I'm not so inspired to work out, certain music I put on, it gets me pumped, it gets me going. I got some anger and stuff like that. I want to, listen to certain artists. We won't mention any names, but I could take it out with the punching bag, or beat down this bicycle, or maybe even do something after dark with a certain special someone or whatever's. And I got certain music that helps get me there and things of that nature. So it can be very healing, very therapeutic. And so, yeah, the show is all about sort of talking about the artists and some of their background, the journeys they've been through, but more importantly, some of the medical things that they've overcome, that they've dealt with. And their hope is that they can really help illustrate and help us all to not only appreciate how great their music is, but more importantly, how seriously they're taking their health. So so it's a show. You can catch us on Instagram and YouTube, and we'll certainly do all the plugs and things of that nature accordingly. But yeah, we're really excited to have a lot of household names and some up and coming people who you may or may not know. So we're trying to give them a little bit of PR and another kick as well, so that their careers can be just as inspiring as the people that you do know and love.
Awesome. Yeah, and we've been in talks. Doc and I've been talking about doing something, almost like something for the guys out there, to talk about your health, to talk about medicine, and talk about the things that guys don't like to talk about. It has to come to the table, because we don't have conversations about health. We don't have conversations about prostate cancer, about other issues that we go through. So I think it may be something that's needed. So put your comments in there to see what you would like to hear, because we want to bring stuff that's going to be beneficial to people in the future. And we appreciate it, and all the follows and all the likes and everybody that's surrounding us, because you don't change the world without action. We talk about the action-based life. And so when you know better, you do better. That's the conversation that I always have. Is I didn't know anything when I came from Palmer Park, Maryland, with 2 teenage parents, and learned a lot, because I learned the world is bigger than just my block. I know Doug said the same thing. Like, you learn the world is bigger than just you. So get out of your own way, get the education, learn the information, and let's try to keep moving us forward. So tell them, everybody, where they can find you, Doc.
Sure, absolutely. So the show is musicandmedicine.show, just as simple as it sounds. And that's on Instagram, and the same name on YouTube. And then my name, if people have questions or things like that, then we'll certainly put it below as well, is M-O-S-H-E, Mo, and then she, and Lewis. So it doesn't get too much easier than that. Moshe Lewis, MosheleWis, and you can easily find me. Luckily, pretty much nobody in the world almost has my name. I think there may be one person who's getting ready to retire, but there's no other doctor. There's no other person like me. So I say that without any bragging, with all modesty. But yeah, love your show, love what you're doing. It's been a great friendship that's been developing. And like you said, we are moving to a different day, whereas men, it's okay to talk about our health, our weaknesses, our strengths, our loves, things that we want to accomplish, and the fact that we want to continue to be there and have our men be there for their families and things like that, and not take their health for granted, being like, yeah, I'm all right. because that, those days need to end, and we don't need to be so fearful. And let's just call it a spade what it is, of getting a finger, up our ass. I mean, let's just say, sensors are all off for everything these days, so that's not the worst word that can be used. And so we need to be able to move past that, because sometimes, this test at least, may, like you said, be able to detect cancer, and now there's a blood test for that, without trying to get all into that part of medicine and be for a later show. But we want guys to know, hey, we love you. We need you around. We need you to be the father and the man that you want to be. And part of that is making sure we got your health intact, because the wealth is great and it's important and can be of use, but without the health, it pretty much means nothing. And we've certainly seen that with some of our icons in these last few years. And I know Ray feels the same way. We want to bring it to an end, which I'm like, stop. Like, I don't want to hear like, oh, I was about to get that surgery. We won't call that person out. I was going to do such and such, but I didn't really take it seriously. And I thought, based on my calculations, I don't know where they did them at, that I might have another year or two. You may have a few weeks and maybe a few months. But we have a lot of celebrities in our community, and others as well, with all due respect, who delayed some really serious things in their health. And we want to say, hey, we're here, we'll answer your questions, and really try to take men's health to that next level for our community.
Well, fantastic. Well, Doc, thank you for being on. We went long today because I think it's such an important show. The conversation we have, I had all the scopies last year. I was in the hospital at the end of 2019, before 2020 happened. That should have been an omen to me. And I had endoscopy and the other scopy and all that kind of stuff. But it taught me a lesson. You talk about, your health is your wealth, because if you don't have your health, you can't have anything else, no matter what you achieve, what you grab. If you ain't there to enjoy it, to be around, to be present for you, your family, your other people, then it's a hot mess. And so it doesn't matter. So, take care of that. Take care of your mental health. Take care of your mind, because you only get that one. Your body is the temple. This conversation that we have. So, I'm here to bring you the information. What you do with it is what you do with it. So when you know better, you do better. Like Maya Angelou said, do the best you can till you know better. And when you know better, you do better. Thank you for joining us again. We'll see you next week. Peace. Thanks, Doc.
Sure. No, thanks. That was great. Hope I didn't run out of your time thingies. I know you meant.
Oh, no, we good to go.